What's going on, folks? It's Tuesday, and I'm Ted from Nerd Immersion, and let's talk about this week's top 10. My patrons voted, and they decided that it would be the top 10 D&D 5e rare magic items. This isn't, we're talking the quantifying rarity, if you will, right? We've done legendary, we've done artifacts, we've done uncommon magic items. So now we're talking about the top 10 rare magic items. And then again, basically what we'll be doing is going to D&D Beyond using the rare function, sorting by rarity, only rare items, and that's where this list is coming from. So I want to say that I started with 21 on my list of things that I wanted to have, and rather than do a top 20 or top 15, I painstakingly went through and cut all the extra ones out to get us down to just 10. These are also going to be my personal opinion, my top 10 rare magic items. Arguments can be made for a lot of different magic items as to what are, quote, the best, but these are my top 10, so you might see things on here that you wouldn't expect to find on other lists. That being said, let me know in the comments down below what your top 10 rare magic items are, whether they're from personal experience or just from what you see and you think sounds cool. And also, hey, if you like what I do here and like this kind of content, consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out, and we're working our way towards 100,000 subscribers. So hey, maybe we can get me that play button for my birthday in July. Number 10. The Bag of Beans. The reason this is on the bottom of the list, number 10 slot, is because it's an RNG item, and there are a handful of RNG items in D&D, though there aren't many. And honestly, this is on here because you want to, at some point, you want to give these to your players, because it just, anything like this with a random element, this is also less high stakes than something like the Deck of Many Things, which is technically also an RNG magic item, but the Deck of Many Things can be campaign ending. The Bag of Beans, while can be an inconvenience, can also lead to some of the most memorable moments you'll have in a campaign. So basically the way it works is the bag is filled with 3d4 beans. You, the DM, can either determine it on the spot or figure this out ahead of time. And if you've ever thought about a Jack and the Beanstalk situation, this could kind of be what comes from this. But basically, if you were to dump the beans out, they explode in a 10-foot radius. Each creature, including the person dumping it, must make a dexterity saving throw, taking 5d4 fire damage, or half on a successful save, and it ignites flammable objects. The only problem with that is, it's, in my mind, I feel like it should be 5d4 for the number of beans dumped. And from reading this, and I thought that was the case, but I guess not, it's just when they all dump out and hit the ground, it just does that one explosion. In my mind, if you've got 10 beans in there, the explosion should be 10 times larger than if there's one, but that's up to you. But if you do decide to take a bean out, plant it in the ground, dirt, sand, or whatever, and then water it, within a minute, an effect of some kind happens, and that's what this table here below, it says the DM can choose, or you can determine it randomly. I've always determined it randomly. I've had things in place in case they got one of these things, but for the most part, you could determine it ahead of time, but I feel like the random factor is what makes this item so great. So on a 1, toadstools sprout up out of the ground, so mushrooms, right? If you eat it, you roll a die. On an odd, you make a constitution saving throw or take damage, or on an even, you get temporary hit points. 2 to 10, you get a geyser that erupts either water, beer, berry juice, tea, vinegar, wine, or oil, 30 feet into the air for a d12 rounds. This could be great, right? If it's beer, you could, bottle that up. But if it's also like oil or vinegar, these might be useful for you to save, and, use later to have flasks of oil. Treant sprouts. There's a 50% chance that Treant is evil, a chaotic evil, and attacks you, which could be a fun encounter. This is always a good one. An animate, immobile statue in your likeness rises. It makes verbal threats against you. If you leave it and others come near, it describes you as the most heinous of villains and directs the newcomers to find and attack you. If you are in the same plane of existence as the statue, it knows where you are. It becomes inanimate after 24 hours. This I've had happen in my games, and it made for amazing callbacks for the players where someone's like, we heard from that statue. You guys are the worst. We're here to take you down. The campfire, it's just a blue flame campfire. Doesn't really do anything. It just lasts for 24 hours. A d6 plus 6 Shriekers spout out of the ground. No, these are not the awesome monsters from Tremors. These are the plant-type creature. A d4 plus 8 pink toads crawl forth. Whenever a toad is touched, it transforms into a large or smaller monster of the DM's choice. The monster remains for a minute and then disappears in a puff of bright pink smoke. We've had a lot of interesting things where people didn't know and they kept touching the toads and kept generating monster attacks. Hungry Bullet burrows up and attacks. That can always be fun. A fruit tree grows. I've never gotten this one. Oh no, I have gotten this one. It has a d10 plus 20 fruit, a d8 of which act as randomly determined magic potions, with one acts as a poison of the GM's choice. The tree vanishes after an hour. The picked fruit remains for 30 days. The one I haven't gotten that I do want to get, and whenever I get a chance to play, is this one here. A nest of a d4 plus 3 eggs spring up. Any creature that eats an egg must make a DC 20 Constitution saving throw. On a successful save, a creature permanently increases its lowest ability score by 1, randomly choosing among equally low scores. On a failed save, they take 10d6 force damage from an internal magical explosion. I want to get that because I want to see this could be a really fun way to boost stats with the risk of possibly dying, and I think that that's really fun. This one I have had pop up, number 91 to 99. A pyramid with a 60-foot square base bursts upward. Inside is a sarcophagus containing a mummy lord. The pyramid is treated as the mummy lord's lair, and its sarcophagus contains treasure of the GM's choice. And then lastly, a beanstalk appears, and it can lead wherever the DM wants, to a great view, a cloud in the castle, a cloud giant's castle, or some other plane of existence. So I love this. I think the mummy lord is one of the best ones, and I had a really fun encounter that I ran for my players when we did that. So Bag of Beans is just all around good fun any way you slice it. Number 9. The Iron Bands of Bilarro. I really only put this on this list and love this item because I feel like every time I say it, I feel like Doctor Strange, right? That definitely seems like you could be like, Iron Bands of Bilarro, and out come these, chains or bands, and they wrap people up. It just seems like a Doctor Strange thing, and that's why I like it. But basically, it's kind of almost like a weird Pokeball scenario. It's a little ball of iron bands that you can see here, and you can throw it at someone, and it's a containment field, right? So you make an attack roll, based on your dexterity modifier plus your proficiency bonus. On a hit, the target becomes immediately restrained until you take a bonus action to speak the command word to release them again. Doing so or missing the attack causes the bands to contract, and it becomes a sphere again. A creature inside, including the one restrained, can use an action to make a DC 20 strength check to break the bands. On a success, the item is destroyed in and of itself, and the restrained creature is free. However, if they fail, they can't make any attempts to break it until 24 hours have elapsed. So that's what's really cool. It also can be thrown up to 60 feet and work on huge or smaller creatures. So while it does have a chance to be broken if they're able to make a DC 20 strength check, I'm going to say be mindful of who you use this on, right? Probably don't throw this at a giant. Maybe throw it at the pixie. If someone in your party is a warlock and they can drop hex on someone with a disadvantage on strength, they're going to have disadvantage on that strength check to then get out of these. And the fact that unless they have some sort of teleportation magic or something else to break out, if they fail that initial DC 20 strength check, they are stuck for 24 hours. And you can, again, it also kind of reminds me of that item from the Doctor Strange movie that he throws on Mordu, who kind of is like all bound up, but that's a little bit more graphic than just being wrapped up in, iron bands, but you get my point. I think it's really awesome. I've never actually been given or gotten one of these in my campaigns, and hey, it's non-attunement, so that's cool. I guess I also should say this is from the Dungeon Master's Guide, and I think the Bag of Beans was from the basic rules. Number 8. Galder's Bubble Pipe. This is kind of just a goofy magic item that was contained in Lost Laboratory of Qualish, but I love it. It is a pipe, it does require attunement, and basically it has 3 charges, and it blows bubbles instead of smoke. So it's your stereotypical bubble pipe, but it does some cool things aside from that. Those charges come back at dawn. You can use a charge to cast the excuse me, the Fog Cloud spell. You can use 2 charges to cast the Misty Step spell as a bonus action, or all 3 charges to summon a Steam Method as an action. It is friendly to you, obeys your verbal commands, and acts on its own turn in the initiative order. It disappears in a harmless puff of steam after 1 minute, or if it is more than 60 feet excuse me, from the pipe. Well, Misty Step is never not a bad thing to have, and this is, in theory, a once a long rest Misty Step. You can also, 3 Fog Clouds or even a Misty Step and a Fog Cloud can be huge. Don't underestimate the usefulness of obscuring the battlefield with a Fog Cloud. That can really do a big help for sneaking, for gaining access to sneak attack. And again, there's other things like if you happen to find a way to get yourself blind sight or something like that, you can use that to your advantage. It's a 20-foot radius sphere centered on a point. It goes around corners, and that's heavily obscured. Heavily obscured is essentially being blinded. And it can be done out to 120 feet, so you can cast this far away and then maneuver around. And then again, steam methods, nothing super crazy about steam methods, but you're basically adding somebody else to the party who has a decent breath weapon. They do damage when they die, and they can cast the blur spell, and it doesn't necessarily have to be cast on them. It could be cast on you. Plus, they're immune to fire and poison, so that has a lot of benefits. Even if it's just somebody else to take 1 extra attack in a combat, that could be the difference between success and failure. Number 7. Necklace of Prayer Beads. If you know me, you know that I'm a huge advocate for the Necklace of Prayer Beads. It is only usable by clerics, druids, or paladins, but it has a lot of benefits. I think probably one of the best classes to put this on would be the paladin because of their lack of spell slots compared to the other two, though you won't be sad to have this on a cleric, and you're going to have access to potentially some spells you wouldn't normally have as a druid. So this is slightly RNG. Again, it's a D4 plus 2 magic beads. So you get, it could be 3 beads, it could be 6 beads, right? The more beads you have, the better, because the way it works is each bead contains a spell, for lack of a better word, and then a better term. And then every day at dawn, those beads recharge. You can use, what's very interesting right here, is you can cast any of the spells contained from the beads as a bonus action. So that is going to allow you to cast certain spells you would never be able to cast as a bonus action without, finagling things with sorcery points and having levels of sorcerer, or that new feat from Tasha's Cauldron, to allow a cleric, druid, or paladin to do so. Bless is one of them, right? Bless is a really good spell. Paladins and clerics have it. I would say more often than not as a paladin, you shouldn't take Bless because your spell slots could be better served for smiting. But a free Bless as a bonus action is huge, because this could give you a benefit if you want it on yourself, and then follow up with attack actions after the fact. This would give Druid access to Bless, which they wouldn't normally have. Cure Wounds at 2nd level or Lesser Restoration. Again, this is a bonus action, Cure Wounds or Lesser Restoration. Both very useful spells, especially if it's not going to take up the majority of your turn to do so. Same thing with Greater Restoration. I will remind you that Greater Restoration typically has a material component associated with it, but it being cast from the magic item, it negates that. You'll have Branding Smite, which is a bonus action spell normally, so you're not gaining anything there, but it's a free spell, a smiting spell to do extra damage, and again, I believe clerics and druids, I know druids don't have access to it, and I believe clerics don't as well. You have the Planar Ally spell, which summons either a celestial elemental or fiend loyal to you to aid you, but take a look at that casting time. Normally, Planar Ally takes 10 minutes to cast. You have just bypassed that by making it a bonus action, so now you could have a very powerful celestial elemental or fiend on your side to aid as an ally in a combat, or maybe out of combat if you need some other things, healing or whatnot. And then lastly, we have the Windwalk spell, another great spell for overland travel, for escaping a tight situation, and once again, normally has a casting time of a minute. You get to change that to a bonus action. Number 6. the Devotee's Censer. This comes to us from Tasha's Cauldron, where everything is only usable by clerics or paladins, but it is one of the really awesome cleric or paladin specific weapons that we have in the game. I think the only one that existed prior to this was really just the Holy Avenger for paladins. So this is a flail. It's also, I think, the only +1 flail, or so it's just a unique flail in the game. And it also counts as a holy symbol. So you're getting a triple bang for your buck here. You're getting a holy symbol that is also a weapon, and it just flat out does extra D8 radiant damage. It's not an extra D8 radiant damage against fiends or undead. It's just always doing an extra D8 radiant damage. So your flail is basically doing 2d8 damage every time you swing with it, which is pretty awesome for what it does. And it has another even better feature down below. As a bonus action, once again, something that specifically paladins typically don't have a lot of access to great bonus action utility, you can speak the command word to cause the flail to emanate a thin cloud of incense, as we see in the image here, out to 10 feet for 1 minute. At the start of each of your turns, you and other creatures in the incense regain a d4 hit points. That property can't be used until the next dawn. So, downside to using that in combat is it gives a d4 hit points to whoever is within 10 feet of the flail. So it can't discern friend from foe. But where this especially shines is outside of combat. You could take 1 minute outside of combat and all of your allies could heal 10 d4 hit points. That's pretty big. That's saving you how many healing potions are you all going to have to down to come close to 10 d4 healing? Well, you can get that for free once a day. And again, it's a 10-foot radius, or out to 10 feet from it. So it can get definitely your whole party in there. And again, not like it doesn't have combat utility, because it does. If you stay in the backfield as the cleric with the casters and everything else, you could activate it in the backfield and allow it to heal your party while the frontliners are taking the damage. It just negates the use of you really getting in and fighting with it. The only other kind of nitpick downside to this is a flail is a martial weapon, and not all clerics have proficiency with martial weapons, whereas all paladins do. So if you're a cleric that doesn't have proficiency with martial weapons, you can use this for its other benefits, but you won't be adding your proficiency bonus to the attack. Number 5. The Belt of Dwarvenkind. It's very interesting to me that the Belt of Dwarvenkind, with its name there, is best suited for non-dwarves. It does have some benefits for dwarves, but you're better off if you're not one. This is found in the basic rules. This item is also attunement. But regardless, you get, of what race you are, you get +2 to your constitution score to a maximum of 20, and advantage on charisma persuasion checks made to interact with dwarves. This could be either super important for your game or not useful at all, depending on how dwarves and how much interaction you have with those. But it's interesting because it's one of the only items in the games that gives you a +2 to a score. Now, when I say that it's one of the only ones, yes, I'm aware of all the tomes and the books and the Ioun stones. Like, the tomes are a little bit different because that's a permanent increase. The Ioun stones, yes, while they'll increase a stat by 2. That's something, but that's basically all the Ioun stone does, and it can be stolen because it floats around your head. Most of the other items, like the Amulet of Life and the various giant strength belts and the Headband of Intellect, just set your whatever your score is to a number. They'll take it and say, take whatever your intelligence is and make it 19, or whatever your constitution is and make it 19. This increases it by 2. So if you happen to have a 16 constitution or an 18 constitution, you can go from 16 to 18 or 18 to 20. So you're not like, if you have an 18 constitution, an Amulet of Health is going to do you no good, setting your constitution at 19. But the Belt of Dwarvenkind will make it 20. And then again, if you, there's a fun roleplay feature, which is, while attuned to the belt, you have a 50% chance each day to grow a full beard if you're capable of growing one, or a visibly thicker one if you already have one. The only thing that's never really outlined anywhere in the books is, what does it mean to, quote, be capable of growing one? Does that mean that traditional races like elves can't grow a beard, or can they with the Belt of Dwarvenkind? It doesn't really say. And then again, the huge benefits if you are not a dwarf. Advantage on saving throws against poison and resistance to poison damage. That's a great supplement for a lot of races. You have dark vision out to a range of 60 feet. Depending on what race you are, this could be huge. And you can speak, read, and write Dwarvish. The only thing I wish was on here was that if you already had dark vision, it extended it another 60 feet or something like that. Because if you already have dark vision when you gain the Belt of Dwarvenkind, that little bit of it doesn't do anything for you, though you still benefit from everything else. Number 4. The Knave's Eye Patch. This comes to us from Waterdeep Dragon Heist and is most notably worn by Jarlaxle Baenri of Brigand Earth fame. But yeah, it's an attunement magic item, and I like it for a couple of reasons. One, it's advantage on perception checks based on sight. You're never going to not want to have that. Two, this is the only, I believe, the only canonical way to ignore sunlight sensitivity. We all know, and probably your DM and my DM have all done the thing where you make sunglasses essentially an option so that people can avoid sunlight sensitivity. That was always a thing you could buy, night sun dark glasses or whatever from older editions that were like a relatively cheap thing you could buy that allowed you to negate sunlight sensitivity. This magic item lets you do that. And then it also has the following third feature, which is you are immune to magic that allows others to read your thoughts or determine when you are lying. Creatures can communicate telepathically with you only if you allow it. This is obviously heavily tied into the character and backstory of Jarlaxle, but if you're able to convince your DM to give you access to an eye patch, maybe you already have an eye patch and this is just an improvement, or rock your eye patch even though you have both eyes, because this does a lot of really cool stuff. And I don't think I've ever seen one of these crop up in games outside of, again, it being on Jarlaxle, but I think this would be a really cool item to give out to someone. Number 3. I mean, do I even need to explain the Sunblade? It's a lightsaber. I mean, really, I could just stop the video right here and that would be enough of an explanation for a large portion of you, but I'll go a little bit further. So it is usable by anyone who is proficient with short sword or long swords. It also has the finesse property, so it functions with strength or dexterity, which also means it's usable by folks who would like to use it for sneak attack purposes. And it's basically a hilt, as you can see there, but then when you use a bonus action, you activate it, and the blade comes out. It is a +2 longsword, and I guess I should say it's not a longsword, actually. It's a +2 blade that deals radiant damage instead of slashing damage. So even if the creature you're normally fighting is somehow immune to slashing damage, even from magical sources, you're only dealing radiant damage and nothing else. And then again, if you happen to hit an undead with it, you're going to deal an extra D8 radiant damage on top of that. Oh, sorry, it is a longsword. My mistake. It is a longsword, but it just does radiant damage instead of slashing damage. And then again, you have the extra benefit of dealing things to undead. It has it illuminates the area as well, so it can kind of negate the need for a torch. It emits bright light in a 15-foot radius and dim light for another 15 feet. The important part here is this light is sunlight, so things that are affected by sunlight, like vampires or other things, have to deal with the fact that this blade that might be piercing their chest next turn is also negating their regeneration because it is sunlight. And then while it's up, you can use an action to expand that radius by 5 feet each action to a maximum of 30 feet. Remember, that's 30 feet of bright sunlight, another 30 feet of dim light, or reduce it down to 10 each. It's awesome. It's in the basic rules. Everybody loves a lightsaber. End of story. Number 2. Mizzium Armor. This comes to us from Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, and if you've ever thought to yourself, how can I make adamantine armor better? Well, the answer is Mizzium Armor. It is a magical alloy, again, technically in theory contained only in the world of Ravnica, but you can import it to your own game if you want. So similar and identical to adamantine armor, while you're wearing a suit of armor made with this material, you are immune to critical hits. So critical hits against you become normal hits. So you'll still take damage if someone rolls a natural 20. However, that damage is just standard. Nothing will take the wind out of your DM's sails than them accidentally rolling a crit on you and getting excited to roll all those dice for you to then go, but it's just a normal hit on me. But then there's more. In addition, if you are subjected to some sort of magical effect that allows you to make a strength or constitution saving throw to take half damage, you instead take no damage on a successful saving throw. So it's not full-blown evasion, but if you succeed for a damage effect that would cause half, it does 0 to you. If you can happen to find a way to get yourself access to evasion while also having Mizzium Armor, you're in a pretty good spot for avoiding pretty common saving throws. Number 1. The Cloak of Displacement. This item is also attunement, and while I'm sure a lot of you know what it does, there's a reason it's so popular. And one, it also looks really cool with the Displacer Beast tentacles kind of coming down the sides, but this is a tank or a melee combatant character's dream. What it does is it projects an illusion of you basically right next to you, and this manifests in game mechanics term as creatures have disadvantage on attack rolls against you. If you take damage, the property ceases to function until the start of your next turn, and it's suppressed while you're incapacitated, restrained, or otherwise unable to move. So again, if you take any damage, not just damage from a certain creature, so an easy way to get around a Cloak of Displacement is an area of effect, spell, or damage effect that allows half on a successful save. So if you have a Cloak of Displacement on, someone drops a fireball and you succeed on your saving throw, you still take half damage, but now you've been damaged, so the displacement feature of the cloak ends for this given turn. Obviously, again, a Cloak of Displacement on something like a rogue is just bananas, because between the Cloak of Displacement, evasion, and uncanny dodge, you just increased your survivability immensely. But again, folks, this is disadvantage on all attack rolls against you. Nothing makes you feel more like a badass than going toe-to-toe with a red dragon and watching them whiff every attack because they have disadvantage. And I can speak on that from personal experience, because in the one game I was actually able to get a Cloak of Displacement, that exact scenario happened. And again, this can also turn things similar. We talked about Mizzium Armor making you immune to critical hits. This is a great way to turn a critical hit into a normal hit, or possibly into a complete critical miss, by having them have to roll 2 dice and watch that natural 20 turn into a 3. Again, you can then do if you have other means of reducing damage, like let's say you happen to have this on a barbarian, right? And your barbarian is raging. They have disadvantage on the attack rolls to hit you in the first place. Then they hit you, you're still raging, so the damage is reduced. There's a ton of ways you can chain the Cloak of Displacement with other survivability techniques. And again, while it would be useful on something like a backline archer or maybe a caster from a far distance, this would be better suited more often than not to the person that's always running into the fray, as they're more than likely the ones who are going to get hit with the melee attacks. So I guess I should say it's also attack rolls. I said melee attacks, but it's attack rolls, so this functions the same on ranged attack rolls and spell attack rolls. So no different if you're being struck with a sword, shot with an arrow, or hit with a firebolt. This effect works just the same. So anyway, that is it, folks, for my top 10 rare magic items. Like I said, this list was around 20 when I started, and I had to cut things down to get it to 10 because there's a lot of really great rare magic items out there. That is also an interesting thing when you look through the list of rare magic items and even look at what I've done on this list. You'll see that some things that they all fall under rare. Things like Galder's Bubble Pipe, while it is cool, fails a lot in comparison to something like the Belt of Dwarvenkind. They're both rare. One provides you exceedingly more passive, always-on useful benefits as opposed to a couple of limited spells per day. So, thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to stay tuned next week where we'll go over the next Top 10 Tuesday, where, again, my patrons over on Patreon vote for these every week. I do a poll, and then we do the winner, which is this video that you just saw, and then next week will be the runner-up, and then I cycle through and add a new list. So if you would like to help be able to influence what content shows up here, joining the Patreon is the best bet for that. Every tier gets to vote on these polls. So thank you again to my patrons, and thank you to all of you for watching, and every week and commenting and leaving me all these nice posts and things, or constructive criticism as well to help me make these videos better and provide to you what you want to see. I'll see you next time.